I loved Jurassic World Rebirth, and so to celebrate, we are back at it again to take some more of the incredible dinosaur designs from that movie and turn them into Lego form inside of LEGO Jurassic World. Now, of course, last time we had already built the Spinosaurus, the T-Rex, and the Mosasaurus, which was incredibly awesome, and now you're probably asking yourself, hey Blitz, should I leave a like on today's video? Yes, thank you so very much for your kindness and your continued support. But beyond that, you're probably also asking, which dinos are we building today? Well, you guys know the drill. We're going to take 6 more dinosaurs, which are going to be the following. We've got the Titanosaurus, the Velociraptor, the Dilophosaurus, the Ankylosaurus, the Aquilops, aka Dolores, which was one of the ones that a lot of you guys asked to see designed, and even
Quetzalcoatlus.
Yes, thank you to the Google pronunciation there, because I am completely butchering the name for that dinosaur. But we're going to put all 6 of them into a dino race and find out which ones we need to build. And away we go. Okay, so let's see which 3 dinos we're going to need to build. It looks like it's probably going to be the Titanosaurus. Oh, never mind. What the heck? Ankylosaurus out of freaking nowhere, winning the entire race. So who got second and third place? Quetzalcoatlus and the Aquilops? Okay, so now that we have our top 3 dinosaurs in the win, the Ankylosaurus in first place, the Quetzalcoatlus in second place, which I'm actually really excited to build, and also Dolores in third place, let's get to building. So here we are inside of the Jurassic World aviary, where we were a little bit limited for options in terms of flying dinosaurs, because there are really only 2 available. So that is going to be something that we're going to need to make a decision on. But here you have the default looking pterodon, which is really cool, but it does seem a tad bit smallish to be a Quetzalcoatlus. And then we have the mighty pterodon, which in my opinion looks most definitely much closer to the design that we see for the Quetzalcoatlus inside of Jurassic World Rebirth. Again, it's obviously not a perfect one-to-one copy, but I'm kind of leaning towards this one as being the one that we go with. All right, so we're back in the customizer, ready to cook up again, and this time we've got a very difficult task because we've got the Quetzalcoatlus. This one is going to be extremely difficult because we really only have 2 options available to us, and that is the Dimorphodon, which is the smaller of the dinosaurs. It's pretty cool looking and could have potentially served us right as far as the design is concerned, because it does give you a couple of nice designs. But considering that the Quetzalcoatlus in the actual film is quite large, I feel like the only dinosaur that makes sense is actually to try to convert one of our pterodons into a Quetzalcoatlus. My goodness. Well, we're definitely gonna need to fix the torso because that looks terrifying. For the flying dinosaurs, they do restrict you to only 2 customizable parts, which is the head and the torso, so there is no tail to customize, so that's kind of a bummer. It also limits us in terms of the actual torso, as you can see, to just 2 options, which is a skeleton or a pterodon. So we're obviously going to go with the pterodon design, since that is the only option that is actually available to us here. And then, of course, for the head, that is where things do get a little bit more interesting because we have more variety. We can choose the Dilophosaurus design, the Indominus Rex, the regular pterodon, the skeleton design, the Triceratops, and last but certainly not least is the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Now, with that in mind, at first I was kind of certain that I want to go with the design for the pterodon, but I almost think that it would be better to go with the T-Rex because I feel like the T-Rex offers you a little bit of a kind of wider face, which is what we're trying to do, because the Quetzalcoatlus does have this giant beak. So we're going to really try to kind of recreate that to the best of our ability here and make sure that that is a detail that is nailed down right, because all the other faces don't really serve us right as far as that is concerned. So we're going to go with the T-Rex there. I do actually want to take a look at our designs first. So let's see our default pattern. That's interesting. Then we have this kind of pattern that appears on the wings and stuff. So that's kind of cool. Then we have the giraffe print. We have the leopard print, the pixels, the polka dot, the speckled look, the stars, and the tiger stripes. None of which really look all that great. My 2 favorite looks are probably either the default or maybe the giraffe print. But I think we're going to keep it default for now and try to see what kind of color scheme we can cook up. So the number one thing would be to try to figure out how to do the beak in a yellow color. But the problem with that would be that in order to get the beak to be yellow, that would mean we would have to make the entire torso yellow, which is absolutely unacceptable because that is definitely the wrong color scheme. So it seems like that might be something that we'll have to sacrifice a little bit in part here, as far as the aesthetic is concerned. And instead, I'm going to choose kind of a bluish color scheme because the dinosaur itself does have kind of a bluish hue to it. Now, I wish maybe we could go with a darker blue. Oh, okay, so that's interesting. If we go with a darker blue and then we go with a red for the wings, right? Because it does have that kind of red on its underwings part. So I feel like this kind of will replicate that really, really well. We could go with a darker red, which gives it a very menacing look, actually. But I kind of like the brighter red as well. Man, that's very difficult to decide here. I guess the darker red kind of works better with the darker blue. So maybe we'll stick with that. And then the final color scheme is that little bit of extra print work up top. I almost wonder if we could introduce some yellow there in order to try to replicate the look better. Man, I wish we could recolor the beak. Guys, I've come up with a solution. So one thing I didn't realize is that if we pick the Indominus Rex face, then we can actually change the color scheme of the entire beak. Like you can see that it actually changes color depending on that particular selection. So Indominus Rex is actually going to be our savior here, because then we can go into the third color scheme and recolor this yellow to land that perfect effect that we were going for, where we have that bright yellow beak while still maintaining the rest of the color scheme correctly. And here we have it, ladies and gentlemen, our own version of the Quetzalcoatlus inside of LEGO Jurassic World. And I gotta say, it's not perfect. That is certainly true. I do wish that we could have gotten a little bit more customization of the colors on the design itself, but it's pretty dang cool. There it is next to the classic pterodon, and you can see that it does look substantially different. I also feel like choosing the Indominus Rex headpiece makes it look larger, which is kind of what we were going for. So in that sense, it definitely was the right decision. I like the wingspan being as epic as it is. I like the red clashing with the blue. It does work very, very well in that sense. And it does have a very, very mighty presence, to say the least. You hear that stomp? That is the next dino that we're building. One of the most unique looking dinosaurs of all time, without a shadow of a doubt. That is, of course, the Ankylosaurus, which looks absolutely insane with its crazy spiky kind of barricaded back, the crazy shape for the tail, and it does include the really cool rolling attack, which I've always appreciated. But now let's see if we can turn it into the Jurassic Rebirth version. So here we are back in the lab, ready to go ahead and customize our dino. Fortunately enough, there are Ankylosauruses in the game itself, as we just saw the default look, but we also do have this customizable one available to us as well, which is obviously quite wonderful. Now, as far as the design that we see in the actual movie, it's actually pretty dang similar to the regular look, so we don't actually have to do a whole lot of changing. I mean, I guess we could take a look at the different heads pieces that are available here, and I genuinely think that probably the best look as it is to maybe just stick with the default Ankylosaurus, or it's kind of difficult to decide, honestly, because the one in the movie does have more like actual horns on the back of its head. So I'm trying to see if there's anything that is remotely similar to that. This doesn't put the horns in the proper position, so can't really use that one, unfortunately. So I think what we're going to go with is most likely, just to get kind of more of that jagged look for the actual design, is actually probably the Indominus Rex version. So that's a nice little difference. Then for the torso, we're going to keep it the way that it is, just because the other torsos do not work. Skeleton is definitely not the right look. Spinosaurus is most definitely not the right look, and neither is Stegosaurus. So we're just going to keep this one on the Ankylosaurus design. And then, of course, we have the tail to look at, which is the last piece of the dinosaur that we get to customize. We can go into skeleton form. We can keep the Ankylosaurus design or the Stegosaurus look. But based on the pictures from the movie itself, as much as this dinosaur just appear for just a slight portion of the movie, I think that this works perfectly fine. So we have the look figured out. I'm pretty happy with the look. Now we just got to get the color scheme right. And the color scheme is really where things are going to probably kind of fall apart or come together, depending on whether or not we succeed. The color scheme that I kind of want to follow based on this one specific image that you're currently seeing on your screens right now is this one right here, where we're going to try to get this kind of a greenish gray design going. And we can't use these bright greens because unfortunately they just stand out too much. So I think we're going to have to stick to like these darker greens. So maybe that one right there could be a nice little base coat for our design. Let's see what the secondary color would be. Yeah, again, this green is just far too bright. So can't really go with that. That's an interesting option. That is just too similar in color. I actually kind of like this kind of like lightish brown color. That kind of works well. The gray does not. These are just too vibrant, too much saturation in some of these colors, so they don't really work. So let's attempt this one right here. And then for the third color scheme, which is the pattern design, I'm kind of thinking of almost like a lighter-ish color. Okay, that might be a little too light. And that gray actually kind of works. I sort of like that. Not gonna lie, that actually kind of looks quite nice. So I am kind of a fan of that particular look right there. Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna go with. And so here we are back in the game itself to check out our handiwork. And I gotta say, I actually really love this color scheme. I think it came together really well to give us a pretty accurate rendition of the Ankylosaurus that we see inside of Jurassic World Rebirth. I mean, it's not perfect as far as the hues are concerned, and I wish we could have made those little spikes on his head look like actual like horns instead of whatever design it appears to be here. But unfortunately, the game doesn't offer us that luxury, so we just had to get as close as we possibly could. And as far as that is concerned, I think we nailed it. And so back to the customizer we go. This time we're joined by Mr. DNA, who's going to help us to assemble Dolores, aka the adorable Aquilops dinosaur that appears in Jurassic World Rebirth. Now, with this one, we've got kind of a very complicated decision to make, because as far as size is concerned, there's really no better dinosaur that we could select than the Compy, because it's going to be at least remotely close in height to Dolores. But as far as looks are concerned, there's obviously not going to be a better dinosaur that we could select than the Triceratops. So that would be the best option as far as that is concerned. So the decision is really to try to figure out which way we go. So instead, let's just build both, and I'll let you guys decide which one turned out best. So we're going to kick things off on the Compy side of things, where we definitely needed to go ahead and implement, ideally, this shape for the actual head of the dinosaur. But the thing is, Dolores doesn't have like the actual horns of the T-Rex. So because of that, I technically can't actually use that design. So I'm going to try to find something that is remotely-ish close to that. I kind of almost like the idea of maybe using the Spinosaurus design and then using coloring to accentuate that kind of head plate. So that's kind of the tentative idea there. Then for the body, as far as the body is concerned, we could go with the spikes. That would be kind of interesting. Definitely not the skeleton design. And it would be sort of cool to go with the Stegosaurus, but it would be inaccurate. So because of that, I guess we're really limited to just the Compy default look. And then as far as the tail is concerned, we're definitely not going to go with the Ankylosaurus design. This one works well, the Compy design. The Dimorphodon tail actually works really well here as well. Skeleton does not apply to us, and neither will Stegosaurus. So I think I'm going to go with, it's kind of difficult to decide, but I think we're going to go with the default Compy look. And then we get to the color scheme side of things, where we really need to like focus on a lot of orange/beige sort of colors. So that is going to be the predominant color scheme that we're going to apply here. Slash, I guess orange could kind of work as well. Maybe even this like hue of brown could kind of work. In fact, I kind of like that. That looks pretty good. Then for the belly portion here, we're definitely going to go with a beige colorway. So that works really well to accomplish the goal that we're going for there. And that just leaves us with one more color, to apply, which is the color for the top of the head. And like I said, I do want to try to accentuate that portion with maybe like a darker orange or something like that. So I think that would work pretty well for what we're going for. But of course, before we jump into actually taking a look at Dolores, we also do need to put together our other design, which was the one for the Triceratops look. And this one I think will look much better in terms of its accuracy, but unfortunately will not be correct in terms of its scale. We do have a lot of great options as far as the actual headpiece is concerned. There's really like tons and tons of variety here for sure. But I think the one that I personally like best is really between the Velociraptor, and then I also do like the way that the Indominus Rex looks, because again, it does remove the 2 extra horns that Dolores doesn't have. So because of that, I kind of, though the Velociraptor does give it a little bit more of a raised face. I wonder, oh man, it's so difficult to decide. I think I'm gonna go with the, oh my gosh. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with the Indominus Rex because I think that it just looks a little bit better. As far as the torso is concerned, we're definitely not gonna go with the Stegosaurus. Triceratops is the one that I am most certainly leaning towards, but we can take a look at the others and you can see that none of them really work towards the actual body design of Dolores. So I feel like this will be the perfect design. And then of course for the tail, we don't want any spikes on the tail, which is why the Triceratops default tail is the one that we are going to go with. That of course then leaves us with the color scheme of Dolores, which interestingly enough actually starts out in a flipped manner where we're actually going to do the lower portion of the dino first, where I'm trying to find kind of an off-white beige sort of color, because I do think that's the right color to apply here. In fact, I think that would work quite nicely here. And then for, of course, the main predominant color, we want to go with something quite a bit darker for the color scheme. Maybe even a little bit of an orange-ish hue involved in there. I'm trying to see how I blend this in terms of the colorways. I almost like this color. Yeah, I kind of like this color scheme that's kind of like a brownish orange. It seems like a really nice combination. And then we're going to try to accentuate maybe... Ooh, that looks freaking perfect. Like that literally looks like the exact color scheme that we need. So here we have our customized compy to look more like Dolores, and there are parts in the movie where she actually does stand up on 2 legs, so I feel like this kind of somewhat works. Obviously it's not perfect in terms of its shape, but in terms of its scaling, it works perfectly. Like look at the sizing right there between a human and quote-unquote Dolores. It works perfectly well. Also, if you're wondering what she looks like relative to the regular compy design, there you have it right there in a nice little side-by-side shot. But then we have this, which is pretty dang perfect. I mean, whether it be the color scheme or obviously the shape of the head slash the entire shape of the dinosaur itself, this one is pretty dang fantastic. I feel like if we could just simply take this dinosaur and make it the size of this dinosaur, we would have the perfect version of Dolores inside of LEGO Jurassic World. Now you can still have an absolute blast just rampaging around and smashing and bashing your way through stuff. So there's still plenty of fun to be had with the medium scale size, I guess, of Dolores. But unfortunately, we can't get the scaling right to be just perfect. So there you guys have it. Those were the dinos that we assembled today. Of course, if you guys did enjoy today's video, please don't forget to go on ahead and scroll down, smash that thumbs up button. If we reach 1,000 likes on today's video, I promise you guys another one of these LEGO Jurassic World videos down the line. So of course, if you guys want to see that happen as soon as possible, reach the like goal of 1,000 likes. Thank you so very much for your kindness. Thank you so very much for your continued support. I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day. Peace out. I'll see y'all later, alligators. Bye-bye, everybody.